So, welcome back to JRN3365. We're talking about the production switcher, and I want to talk a little bit about the production switcher that we use here at Troy Trojan Vision. We use the broadcast PICs, as you can see here, and this is a version of the broadcast PICs. So the production switcher in ours particular has multiple has a storage of multiple inputs. If it can be not only video sources, but also has a hard drive that can store images, files, music, video, anything that we can kind of put onto it that it can play back. So for our production switcher, it deals in sets of twos. We have 2 channels for CG storage or named graphics. We got 2 channels for still storage, which are things like over-the-shoulder graphics, full-page graphics. We also have 2 channels of clip stores, so things like audio clips, video clips, opens, restarts, along those lines, and then 2 channels of animation. And an animation is a video clip that has an embedded alpha channel, so we can use it for a background. And because the switcher knows that it's in that animation store, it knows that it's going to exert a little bit extra effort into putting in a key or level on that. So for our switcher, the broadcast PICs, and I do have a copy of this image up on Canvas that if you want to get a closer look at it or if you want to use it for a study guide, you can. So with our broadcast PICs, it has multiple rows, and each of these rows is called a bus. So this green row is a bus, this white row is a bus, this green row is a bus. All of these individual rows are a bus, and a bus has a specific function if it's going to be program, preview, a memory recall, routing video from a source to a destination. Now, when we combine 2 buses together to form a specific function like program and preview, we get what's known as a bank. So at the bottom of this screen, this is a program and preview bank. Above it, a program preview bank. This one row right here, this bus, is not a bank. It's not a bank because it's working as a solo function. It's not working with another row. So this very top one is also a bank because this is routing sources and destinations into different locations. So when we're dealing with single rows, they're buses. When we're dealing with multiple rows working together, they are in tandem, that's going to be called a bank. Now, the different buses, like I said, have specific functions. So white buttons tend to denote a preview or a preset, so you can view something before it goes up on the air. A green bus is going to denote something along the lines of program. So if I push any of these green buttons, it's going to go live on the air without me previewing it, whether I'm ready for it or not. And likewise, the white buttons and green buttons are going to pertain to keyers as well. And so when I talk about our keyer, our production switcher has 6 sets of keyers. And I can route through this top row of sources and destinations of different videos going into the keyers. And I can hit a white button to preview it or a green button to look at it on program. So when I preview a key, I can take a video, add a preview so I can kind of see what it's going to look like before it goes out on the air. And I can check the graphic to make sure if it's correctly spelled or if it's the correct person. So if I previewed this name graphic and I noticed that it said Ben Jacobs instead of Anna Gooden, I know that I had the wrong name graphic and I could easily change it in preview. Now, if I went directly and I hit the key in program, I'm going to go from my video source to a video source with the name directly on the air. So I would have to make very sure that I have the right graphic before I put that information on the air. Now, one of the other sections to get something from preview to program is using a section of the switcher called the mix bus. And the mix bus incorporates switches like cut, auto trans, and a fader bar, and so we can use this of our switcher to get something out of preview and put in program. And the way our switcher is set up is we have 2 sets of mix buses. I have basically 2 kind of outputs of our switcher, and these outputs are called an ME bus, a mix effects bus. So for each of these different buses, I've got a program and preview, just like I've got a program and preview in the bottom one. I have a mix effects bus, so I've got cut, transition, and fader bar, cut, transition, and fader bar. And then likewise, I also have keyers. So I've got preview keys and program keys. I've got preview keys, and I should also have the program keys as a part of this as well. So with the 2 different ME buses, it's almost like having 2 switches or 2 switchers that I can send video to different locations or different effects at the same time. Now, one of the things I'm with the switcher is, like I said, whenever we're dealing with the columns, the horizontal columns of buttons, each one of those is going to represent an input on the switcher. So I'm going to go forward for a second, and I know that each one of these individual columns is going to be the same source. So this first column is a video source. This middle column is always going to be a graphics or a laptop source. Further down, I've got this column that's always going to be a satellite source. Now likewise, each row, like I told you, each bus has a specific function. So you can have a row that's going to be program or preview or memory recalls. And when we're dealing with our switcher, since it has two different ME buses, it needs to have what's known as a downstream. So my bottom ME bus is going to wind up having the master video going out on the air. The ME above it, ME1, if I want that video to go out on the air, I have to play it through the bottom switcher or the bottom mix effects bus for people to be able to see it. So with when these two are being overlaid, I've got this ME effects 1, and I've got a little button right here that says ME1. So when I press that, I can access whatever's up here and get that information on the air. So when we're dealing with program preview, like I said, there are multiple ways to get something on the air. And using our mix bus, we're going to be using things like the cut button, which is going to be that instantaneous transition. The auto trans button is one of two options. You can either press a mix and mix or fade them together, or you can do the wipe, which is the geometric pattern or shape to give you a special effect transition. And then to the right of them is going to be a little bar that you can grab, and you can move that bar forward or backwards to adjust the speed of your transition, so you can manually set up the transmission to be something either faster or slower depending on what your needs are. And this is what's called a T-bar, because on the production switcher it is in the shape of the capital T of our alphabet. Now when we're dealing with the keyers, one of the things I talked about with the ME buses is what's known as a downstream key. And this means that your different keyers are going to be one in front of the other in front of the other. So when you're setting up a layer of multiple keys, you have to make sure that they're in the proper order, or else they're not all going to be properly viewed. So when I look at this key level going on here for this name graphic, I've got my very background is going to be my anchor. In front of them, I've got this red bar as my layer 2. Layer 3 is going to be their name. Layer 4 is going to be this circle with the T logo. If I had them in the wrong order and I had the T at the very back, you would only see the top of the circle and the bottom circle as it was behind the red bar. So you definitely want to make sure that when you're setting up your keyers, you want to make sure that they are in the correct order. Now, when I'm looking at TV shows, or when you see TV shows, especially on the main networks, you're going to tend to see that there are going to be little logos in the corners of the screen. And these logos are set up to be downstream of all the other elements in that show. Now, for this particular show in the upper left, I've got two logos going on. And this logo in the bottom right is specific to this one show. The logo on the bottom left is the corporate logo. And so if the GB happened to be behind the Fox News, you would not see it because the Fox News is downstream of all the other graphics. So especially in television corporations, they will have rules set aside for how graphics and things are supposed to be shown. With the Fox News, they're going to say, if you want to have a show on our channel, make sure your logo is in the bottom right, because our logo is going to be in the bottom left. And one of the last things of the switcher that's really nice to have is what's known as a memory. And that's going to be this bus right here by itself. And a memory is basically like a save game or save point in a video game. It's going to remember how everything was when that memory or that save was created. And by just pressing a single button, I can instantly go back to the way that was configured. So one of the things we talked about was this story called News from Around the State. And to build that, I have to set up my anchor on a white row. I've got to assign an animation to one of the keyers, like keyer 1, and then I've got to put the text on keyer 2 because I want key 2 to be in front of that animation, and tie both of them to the background. That's going to take me about maybe 30 seconds to set up. But if I use one of the key recall buttons or the macros, then I just press that one button and in an instant, everything's set up and ready to go. So these macros and memories are really useful when you have complicated aspects of your show, things like green screens or setting up multiple anchors with different over-the-shoulder graphics. So by doing one recall, I can set up my top Emmy bus to have anchor 1 on the top, anchor 2 on preview, key 1 on anchor 1, key 2 on anchor 2, and it's all set to go at just the push of a button. And so as one of the things as the director is you need to be able to see what's going on with your switcher and all the sources that you have. So like I said, when we deal with, we have 2 channels of CGs and video and clips and still stores and animations. The director has instant access to see all the multiple CGs and graphics that they can plot. Likewise, they have the ability to see all the logos that are going on and all the graphics that are coming out of the still store. Now in this particular store, you notice that all of our graphics are on their side, they're sideways. And the reason for this is the TV that's behind the anchor. We actually took a TV and we turned it sideways to get a better looking image. So we had to build all of our graphics sideways to accommodate that. The still store is the ability to look at all these different different video clips that can be played throughout the show. So I've got things like elements for the news open. I've got a sports open playing right now. I also have elements that I can put into monitors behind the anchor, so that can come out of the clip store to be part of a set dressing. And then the last one I said was an animation, and an animation is a video that has an alpha channel embedded in it. So you can see in a couple of these, there's the news from around the state that has that alpha channel that says make the left part of the screen transparent. I've got a weather alpha channel that we use to overlay a weather camera, and I've got an opaque area for our talent to stand in. I've got another one here that would put a blue bar at the top and a red bar at the bottom, kind of frame our 2 anchors that we would use for the beginning of our show. And those are just some more of the hardware that goes into a production switcher that we use for different aspects of our various productions to add additional uses, things like the DVEs, the name graphics, the alpha channels, and everything that goes into the switcher. And again, I've got all this up on Canvas for you guys to use as a study guide to help.